Hi, my name is Grace Walker, and I'm 29 years old. I live a quiet life in Brookhaven, a place most people wouldn't find on a tourist map, but to me, it's home. I'm not famous. I don't come from money. I don't have a designer wardrobe or a picture-perfect Instagram profile. But I do have something I'm proud of, a small, honest life built on purpose. By trade, I work as a floral preservationist. I take wilted flowers and turn them into pressed art pieces for weddings, funerals, or memorials. It's not glamorous, but it lets me hold on to moments that matter for others. In a way, it's how I learned to deal with my own past too, pressing down pain until it flattens into silence. Growing up, my family never really saw me. I was the quiet one, the backup plan. My mother, Marcia, made it obvious that my younger sister, Jenna, was the star. She was always the prettier one, the favorite, the one with the flawless skin and expensive dreams. I was convenient, an afterthought, a placeholder in family photos. For years, I tried to prove I mattered. I earned scholarships, paid my own rent, built my little art business from scratch. But no matter what I did, my mother found a way to compare me to Jenna. Why can't you dress more like your sister? She's marrying into a powerful family, and you're still dipping leaves into glue. It always stung, but I got used to it, until 3 days before Jenna's wedding, when an envelope showed up in my mailbox. It was cream-colored, lined with gold foil, and had my name written in fancy calligraphy. For a brief second, I thought maybe this was a real olive branch, a genuine invitation to be included. I was wrong. Inside was no RSVP card, no rehearsal details, no kind message. Just one printed line. Report to the staff parking area upon arrival. I read it twice, my hands trembling. That wasn't an oversight. That was deliberate. I wasn't invited as family. I was being ordered in like I was part of the hired help. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, staring at the card. My tea had gone cold. My heart was warm with ache. It wasn't just about the wedding. It was a message from Jenna, and from my mother too. They didn't want me there to celebrate. They wanted to put me in my place. I could have declined. I should have. But some part of me, some stubborn, still hopeful part, decided to go. Not for them, but for me. I needed to see for myself how far they were willing to go just to erase me from the frame. And I had no idea that walking into that wedding would unearth secrets powerful enough to tear everything apart. The morning of the wedding arrived with clear skies, warm sunlight, and the kind of crisp breeze that usually signals something beautiful is about to happen. But for me, it felt more like a warning, nature's ironic way of dressing up disaster. I pulled into the venue's long, winding driveway in my 10-year-old sedan, its muffler humming a tired tune as it parked between sleek black SUVs and spotless white limousines. The wedding was being held at one of Brookhaven's most extravagant estates, a historic mansion-turned-event venue, complete with marble fountains, sprawling lawns, and manicured rose gardens. I sat in the car for a moment, steadying my breath. I had spent weeks sewing my own dress, nothing fancy, just a soft plum-colored piece with delicate embroidery and a hand-stitched neckline. I wanted to look presentable, respectable, human. When I stepped out, I clutched the invitation in my hand and walked toward the main entrance. Before I could get far, a large man in a black suit stepped in front of me. "Staff," he asked, eyeing the card. I hesitated. "I'm the bride's sister." He didn't flinch. "Staff entrance is around back. Follow the gravel path to the side door." I nodded, cheeks burning, and turned silently toward the back. His tone hadn't been rude, but it didn't need to be. The message was clear. I didn't belong. The side door led to a narrow hallway that opened into the kitchen. Staff were rushing in every direction, chefs shouting, servers weaving between counters with trays of hors d'oeuvres, florists making last-minute adjustments to bouquets. I stood awkwardly, like someone who had stumbled into the wrong scene, clutching the small satin clutch bag I'd brought with shaking hands. A young server eventually led me to my assigned spot for the ceremony. It wasn't a seat. It was a narrow standing space behind a marble pillar tucked in the far left corner of the hall, almost strategically placed out of view of the central aisle and away from every guest. From there, I could barely see the stage. But I had the perfect view of everyone else, the glittering guests in designer gowns, the gold-plated cutlery glinting under chandeliers, and the flower arrangements that must have cost more than my yearly rent. And then I saw her, Jenna. She was breathtaking in her custom wedding gown, a pully white masterpiece with lace sleeves, diamond-lined bodice, and a dramatic veil trailing behind her. She looked like she had walked straight out of a bridal magazine. But when her eyes landed on me, her perfect smile shifted. "Glad you could make it," she whispered as she passed me by, the corner of her mouth twisting in that familiar smirk. "Just try not to embarrass us this time, Grace." Okay. I didn't answer. I didn't trust my voice to stay steady. I just looked away. The ceremony began. A string quartet played a soft melody. Guests turned in awe as Jenna walked down the aisle, arm in arm with our mother, Marcia, who beamed like she had just handed over royalty. People whispered compliments. Flashbulbs popped. Everything shimmered. But I was standing behind a stone column, hidden like I was the shameful secret of the family. When the vows were over and everyone moved to the reception hall, I quietly followed. As I entered the ballroom, a wave of discomfort hit me again. The room was magnificent, crystal chandeliers, velvet-draped chairs, and servers offering champagne like confetti. Then I found my table. It was positioned behind a tall flower arrangement near the kitchen door, isolated and almost intentionally obscured. I sat down slowly and noticed something even more humiliating. Every guest table had fine china, polished silverware, and folded menus. Mine had plastic utensils and a handwritten note placed on the napkin. "Don't overstep." The handwriting was Jenna's. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't make a scene. I just clenched my jaw and folded the note, tucking it inside my clutch, not out of sentimentality, but as evidence of how far they were willing to go to remind me of my worth in their world. But the humiliation wasn't over. Because when I looked up, I saw Ryan Carter, Jenna's groom, across the hall. And he was staring right at me. Not just glancing. Not just curious. Staring. Eyes wide. Expression frozen. And in that moment, I knew something he hadn't expected had just collided with everything he thought he knew. At first, I thought I was imagining it. But Ryan Carter, Brookhaven's rising business prodigy, the man everyone was calling the next great visionary, wasn't just looking in my direction. He was looking at me. And he wasn't blinking. His smile faded. His hand, resting on the back of Jenna's chair, stiffened. His confident, polished composure cracked for just a second, long enough for me to catch a glimpse of something beneath it. Recognition. I tried to look away, but it was too late. Our eyes had locked, and something silent passed between us, years of questions crashing into the present. Ryan Carter wasn't just Jenna's fiancé. He was Nick, the man I'd fallen in love with 12 years ago. The one who vanished from my life without warning, without closure, without a single goodbye. Back then, I was just 19, a college sophomore with a heart full of fire and a secondhand copy of Audre Lorde in my bag. He was 23, brilliant, shy, and deeply idealistic. We'd met during a community fundraiser to save an old public garden from commercial development. I was volunteering. He was writing code for a neighborhood app. We'd clicked instantly. Our connection had been raw and real. We had dreams of starting a social enterprise, of changing the world with art and tech, of building something that mattered. We were going to move to Chicago together that summer. I even had my bus ticket. And then he vanished. No call, no text, no email, nothing. I remembered standing outside his apartment in the rain, calling his phone again and again, begging for answers I never got. Until now. I pushed my chair back slowly, my hands trembling as I stood. I didn't know what I was going to say. I just knew I needed to breathe, to move, to get away from that table with its plastic cutlery and the ghost of everything I had buried. But before I could walk toward the hallway, Ryan was already there, standing in front of me, blocking my path. "Grace," he said softly. The sound of my name in his voice almost undid me. I straightened. It's been a while. Nick. He winced at the name. I go by Ryan now. I folded my arms. Of course you do. Can we talk? He asked. His voice was lower now, more private. Somewhere quiet? I should have said no. I should have walked away. But I didn't. We slipped into a small lounge room off the side of the ballroom. The music and chatter faded behind the double doors. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. He stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, struggling to find the words. I didn't expect to see you here, he said. When I saw your name on the guest list, I thought it had to be a mistake. So, you still remember my name? I said flatly. He flinched. Grace, I swear to you, I didn't leave because I wanted to. I didn't walk away. I was pushed. My stomach twisted. He went on, carefully, painfully. It wasn't until last year that I found out what really happened. My father, Martin, he paid someone to keep us apart. I narrowed my eyes. Paid who?
His jaw tightened.
Your mother. The air between us shifted. Something cracked in my chest. You're lying, I whispered. She would never. She did. His voice broke a little. I found the bank statements. Direct transfers from my father's business account to your mom's, labeled as education support and family relocation assistance. When I confronted him, he told me everything. He said he was protecting the family brand, that you were a threat to my future, to our company. I blinked hard, trying to process it. My mother had taken money to get rid of me. My own mother had sold my love story for Jenna's perfect future. I thought about the sudden scholarship I was offered back then, the push to switch campuses, her dismissive comments about teenage crushes. The way she insisted I never contact Nick again.
It all made sense now.
I stepped back, suddenly unsteady. And you just believed her? Believed that I didn't care about you? I didn't know what to believe, he said, his voice aching. I was young. I didn't have control over anything. And when my father showed me fake emails from you, I thought you moved on. I thought you forgot me. Tears stung the corners of my eyes, but I wouldn't let them fall. You left, I whispered. And she let you. I never stopped thinking about you, he said. Not for one day. I looked away. This was too much. Too fast. Too buried. But one thing was clear. My sister's wedding wasn't just built on luxury and lies. It was built on my erasure. And if I didn't speak now, the truth would die quietly, like I almost had. I walked back into the ballroom with fire in my veins. The chandeliers sparkled overhead, music floated through the air, and people sipped champagne like nothing in the world could ever be ugly. But I knew better. I knew what this wedding had cost, not just money, but honesty, dignity, and a love that had been stolen from me before it ever had a chance to bloom. I scanned the room and found her. Marcia. My mother. She stood near the main table, laughing with a group of well-dressed women, her hand casually gesturing toward the cake table as if she hadn't rewritten the course of my entire life. Mom. I called out, loudly and clearly. The laughter died. Heads turned. Her smile froze. She looked at me, eyes narrowing slightly, as if I were a stain on her otherwise perfect evening. Grace, she said tightly, walking toward me. What are you doing? You're making a scene. I haven't started yet, I said coldly. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Guests began to pause mid-conversation. The string quartet faltered. I didn't care. I took a breath and turned toward the entire room. I need to say something, I said, my voice shaking but loud enough to carry. Marcia reached for my arm, hissing, Grace, not here. I pulled away. Years ago, I began. I was in love with someone. We had plans. We had purpose. But one day he disappeared, and I thought he left me. I turned to face her. But he didn't. You did. You took money to drive us apart. From Martin Carter. You took a bribe to erase me from Ryan's life, so Jenna could have his world instead. There were gasps. Genuine gasps. Marcia's face turned to stone. That's enough. But I wasn't done. You pushed me out of his life, like I was an inconvenience. You used that money to fund Jenna's lifestyle, her tuition, her dreams, while mine crumbled. You lied to me. You let me think I wasn't worth loving. Her hand came up before I even saw it. Smack. Her palm hit my cheek so hard. My head snapped to the side. The room went dead silent. I slowly turned back to her, my face stinging, the pain radiating down my jaw. She looked shocked, even at herself, but didn't apologize. She didn't have to. Her silence said everything. I stood taller. I'm done, I said quietly. With you. With pretending. With swallowing my worth so you can decorate your lies. I looked straight at Ryan, who had stood from the head table, his eyes wide with fury. And then I turned toward Jenna. She was pale, shaking, her eyes darting between me, Ryan, and Mom, trying to piece together the fall of her perfect kingdom. Did you know? I asked her. Did you know what she did? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time in her life, she had nothing to say. Ryan stepped forward and took a deep breath. I believe her, he said, his voice clear and powerful. Every word. He looked at Jenna. This wedding is off. A collective gasp ran through the room like a jolt of electricity. Jenna jolted back as if someone had physically struck her.
What?
Ryan, you can't, after everything. I can. And I will, he said. Because this wasn't built on love. It was built on deception. I won't marry into a family that destroys lives to secure status. Jenna's hands curled into fists. So, you'll throw me away for her? After everything I gave up? No, he said, stepping away from her. You threw yourself away the moment you let all of this happen. Jenna let out a strangled scream, grabbed her bouquet from the table, and hurled it in my direction. It missed, hitting the edge of a champagne tower and sending glass crashing to the floor. People shrieked. The staff ran to clean the mess. But I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. I just stood there, holding the cheek my mother had slapped. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. Chaos erupted. Some guests stood frozen in disbelief. Others reached for their phones, already recording. Somewhere in the back, the quartet stopped playing completely, and the venue manager looked like he was about to faint. Jenna stood there breathing heavily, fists clenched, mascara beginning to smudge beneath her wild, blinking eyes. Her dream wedding, the showy, spotless celebration she'd meticulously planned, was crumbling before her, piece by piece, in front of everyone. Ryan stepped away from her, his face unreadable but firm. He took a moment to address the crowd directly, his voice carrying above the stunned murmurs and clinking glasses. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, thank you for being here today. But as of this moment, this event is no longer a wedding. Gasps spread like wildfire. This was meant to be a union based on trust, he continued, his gaze drifting to Jenna, then to Marcia. But I've just learned the truth. Truth that changes everything. And I refuse to stand up here and continue living a lie just to protect appearances. He looked toward me, and his voice softened slightly. To anyone who feels uncomfortable, I understand. But I won't start my life with deception. And I certainly won't tie myself to people who would crush others for convenience. Jenna charged forward. So what? You'll just walk away? Because she cried a few tears and told some dramatic story about being your first crush? Ryan turned to her slowly. It's not drama. It's my past. And your family erased it like it didn't matter. Grace isn't just my past. She's the part of my life I should have fought harder for. Marcia, still standing stiffly near the head table, opened her mouth to interject, but Ryan held up a hand. Don't, he said coldly. You've said enough for a lifetime. A server nervously stepped forward to clear broken glass, but no one moved. No one sat. Every guest stood in disbelief, bearing witness to a truth more memorable than any set of vows. Then Jenna did what Jenna always did, she spiraled. You ruined everything, she shouted. This was supposed to be my day. She spun, grabbing a glass of champagne from a nearby table and flinging it at the wall, where it shattered. One guest gasped. A woman in a green dress grabbed her purse and walked out, shaking her head. That was the beginning of the end. One by one, guests started leaving, quietly, awkwardly, some offering glances of pity or admiration in my direction. The staff remained professional, but even they looked stunned by the drama they had just witnessed. I stood still as the room emptied, the echo of shattering glass still ringing in my ears. Ryan turned to me again. "Grace," he said gently, "can we talk? Just the two of us." I hesitated.
There was still so much to unpack.
So much pain. So many unanswered questions. But something about the way he looked at me, soft, steady, regretful, made me nod. Okay. We walked together past the chaos, past the wilted flowers and the stunned faces, through the glass doors and onto the outdoor terrace, where the air was cooler and quieter. The sun had begun to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the lawn. I could finally breathe. "Thank you," he said quietly, breaking the silence. "For standing up. For saying what I never had the courage to dig for." I stared out across the estate. "I didn't do it for you. I did it for me." He nodded. "I know. And I'm glad you did." I turned to face him. "What now, Ryan? You walked away from a wedding. From the life your family pushed you into." He gave a small smile. "Then maybe it's time I finally start living on my terms." And for the first time since I arrived, I believed he actually meant it. The next few weeks passed like the slow settling of dust after a storm. The wedding, or what was left of it, made headlines in local society columns. "Billionaire groom cancels wedding at the altar after shocking family betrayal," one headline read. But I didn't care about the gossip, the whispers, or the speculation. For the first time in years, I felt whole, not because I had won anything, but because I had finally stopped letting them break me. Jenna's fall from grace was swift and silent. Her dream wedding never recovered, of course. And neither did her reputation. The truth had reached everyone. How she benefited from our mother's betrayal, how she stood silently while I was treated like nothing, and how she tried to humiliate me at her own wedding. Soon after, the invitations to charity galas stopped coming. Brand partnerships she had been pursuing fell through. And when she tried to arrange new dates or rekindle old connections, they politely declined. The one man she did try to date after Ryan ended things with her backed out after the wedding incident was mentioned. No one wanted to marry the woman whose sister was slapped in public while she stood by in silence. She called me twice after that. Left messages once or twice more. One was angry, the other weepy. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. As for Marcia, her downfall wasn't loud, but it was complete. The same relatives she once flaunted her status in front of now avoided her at grocery stores. She was quietly uninvited from 2 family weddings and wasn't asked to speak at her cousin's retirement ceremony, a position she'd waited years to brag about. She sent me a letter once. No apology, just a vague attempt to explain that things were complicated and that she did what she thought was best for everyone. I ripped it in half and dropped it in the trash. There was no space in my life anymore for people who wore betrayal like perfume, strong and unapologetic. I moved back into my small cottage in Brookhaven and returned to my floral preservation studio. Orders slowly came in again. Bouquets from brides who didn't slap their sisters, from families that knew love couldn't be bought. Ryan reached out a few days after the wedding. He didn't push or pretend. He just asked if I wanted to talk again. No pressure, no expectations. We met at the old lakeside cafe, where we used to dream together. We didn't try to restart where we left off. We just sat,
Talked.
learned each other again. This version of us was older, wiser, quieter, but somehow more real than ever. I told him I still didn't fully trust him and that I needed time to rebuild what had been lost. He smiled and said, "Take all the time you need. I'm not here to fix the past. I'm here to build something honest, if you'll let me." And I believed him. For the first time, I let myself believe in something new. 6 months later, I stood in front of a modest room filled with women, single mothers, abuse survivors, students who had been pushed out of school, and others who had been told they were less than all their lives. And I told them my story, not the version in magazines, not the gossip in wedding circles, the real version, about how your own family can silence you, how shame is passed down like jewelry in some households, and how healing begins when you stop apologizing for simply existing. They listened. Some cried. Others nodded like they'd been waiting to hear those exact words all their lives. That day was the launch of the Grace Initiative, a nonprofit Ryan and I co-founded together. Not for PR, not for headlines, but to create real opportunity for women like me. Women like them. Women who knew what it meant to be cast aside and still rise. Ryan had officially stepped away from the toxic legacy of his father's company and used his resources to fund the initiative. But the vision, the direction, the heart of it, that was mine. He never tried to take that from me. In fact, he often said, "I might have built companies, Grace, but you build people." Life didn't become perfect. I still had moments where I doubted myself. I still had flashbacks of that slap, of the betrayal, of standing behind a column while my own family acted like I didn't exist. But I also had peace. I had people who saw me. I had a purpose that couldn't be bought or buried. Ryan and I took our time, months of slow conversations, deep healing, and moments where we both questioned whether love was still possible between us after everything. But one quiet spring evening, on the same terrace where we had spoken after the wedding, he gave me a small, delicate gold ring. Not flashy, not expensive, just elegant. "I don't want a second chance at the past," he said. "I want a first chance at the future with you." I said yes, not because I needed him, but because I knew I had already saved myself. He was just someone worth walking beside. My mother and sister? They eventually stopped reaching out. They faded into the corners of my life like bad wallpaper, visible but no longer able to shape the space around me. Sometimes silence is the best revenge. And me? I'm still Grace Walker, still 29, still healing. But this time, I'm not hiding behind pillars. I own the room. 2 months after launching the Grace Initiative, Ryan and I stood in the small garden behind my cottage, where wildflowers grew freely and everything felt honest. There were no chandeliers, no photographers, no designer gowns. Just a few close friends, my mentor from the art center, and the gentle sound of birds overhead. Ryan wore a soft gray suit. I wore a pale blue dress I'd stitched myself, the same one I'd once thought I wasn't worthy of wearing. As the sun began to set, we exchanged vows we had written ourselves. Simple, quiet, and free from the weight of the past. "I don't promise perfection," he said, holding my hands gently. "But I promise presence, growth, and truth every day." I smiled, tears warm in my eyes. "And I promise never to shrink myself again. Not for love. Not for anyone. Because now I know love should never ask you to disappear." When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, there was no applause, just a peaceful silence, the kind that fills your chest like sunlight after a storm. We didn't marry to fix the past. We married because we were finally ready for the future. If you found this story powerful or moving, don't forget to like the video to support the channel. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below and share what part of the story impacted you most. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe for more real-life inspired stories that uncover betrayal, truth, and justice. Your support means everything.